When the Malaysian government handed down a budget full of tax breaks and cash handouts earlier this month, the feeling of an election was in the air. The Prime Minister could go to the polls soon, but at the latest, an election must be held by 2013. Despite gains at the last poll, the opposition has failed to consolidate its progress against a wily Prime Minister, Najib Razak. And opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim remains embroiled in a further sodomy trial, which his supporters claim is politically motivated. Nik Nazmi Ahmad is a state assemblyman for Selangor, Malaysia's most populous state. As the youngest elected representative, the 29-year-old belongs to the Opposition People's Justice Party, or PKR, which is led by Anwar Ibrahim. Nik Nazmi Ahmad, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
There's a lot of speculation that the Malaysian Prime Minister might call a snap election within the next few months. In the last election in 2008, the opposition party scored historic gains. How successful do you think you'll be this time?
Well, I think Malaysian politics is still very tricky to call at this point of time, but I think the historic gains made by the opposition coalition in the last elections are here to stay, because I think Malaysians want a two-coalition system in place, because they are quite tired of the abuses that has happened under the one coalition system over the past 50 years.
Can this government that's been in power for so long be defeated?
Well, I think since the Bersih rallies calling for electoral reforms last July, which attracted not only a massive crowd in Malaysia, but a massive crowd globally, and I think the biggest was in Melbourne, in Australia, I think there's been real prospect of change, because for the first time, a real multiracial group of Malaysians are willing to go to the streets demanding for free and fair elections. So I think, yes, there is a real chance of political change taking place this time around.
The opposition parties appeared to have one major thing in common at the last election, and that was to get rid of the government. Yeah. But you all have very different agendas. So what's to say that cracks won't appear very quickly if you do win government? Yeah,
the opposition parties consist of the Islamic PAS, the left-wing Democratic Action Party, and the centrist Justice Party, led by Anwar Ibrahim, which I am from. And I think, yes, there are differences, but I think that's part of Malaysia, because Malaysia is a very diverse country, and that represents the entire spectrum of Malaysian society. And before this, we did not have a formal electoral coalition going to the 2008 elections. This time around, we've formed a formal coalition called the People's Pact, which is in power in 4 states. And at the same time, we've published what we call an Orange Book, which details our common policies.
What are the main issues that the election is likely to be fought on?
Well, I think, first of all, the election will be fought on the issue of unity and racial unity, which is very much a major issue in Malaysia because of the divided politics. Then, so that's one issue. Then, secondly, I think is the issue of the economy. I think it's a global matter, but especially in Malaysia with rising prices, stagnant wages, I think a lot of stagnant job opportunities. That's a big issue, especially among the younger generation. So I think, then thirdly, I think is the issue of democracy, because I think people, and we've seen from the Arab Spring, that everyone, even Muslims get democracy.
What about corruption? All sides have been accused of corruption. What's your party doing to try to stamp it out?
Well, the People's Pact, which is in control of... I'm a state legislator from Selangor, which is the most developed state in the country. And we are the first state in Malaysia, in fact, the first government in Malaysia that has introduced a freedom of information enactment or legislation. So that is a serious part, I think, in promoting transparency and fighting corruption. Everyone talks about fighting corruption until they are in power. So we actually, because we are now in power, it doesn't serve our interests, but we think that this is in the people's interest. That's one thing. We are all for more reforms to give real power to our anti-corruption agencies, to get a declaration of interest from the people in politics. Those are the things that we're pushing for, a more free and transparent media, which we believe are crucial towards fighting corruption.
You mentioned the street protests before.
Yeah.
A lot of people took to the streets, in fact,
Yeah.
tens of thousands of people, because they were unhappy with the electoral laws, which they say are unfair. Is there still a lot of disquiet about those laws?
Well, you know, the government response to the street protests has been quite, at first, it was quite negative. People were arrested for wearing yellow, which was the colour of the gathering. You know, some of them were accused of spreading communism because they were wearing Che Guevara T-shirts or having communist literature. And you know, there was even an edition of The Economist, which was reporting about the protests, which were actually censored with black marker pens. You know, when they were talking about someone who died from the protest, those parts were actually literally censored. But I think subsequently the government realized that wasn't the way to respond to it. And finally, the government has agreed, the Prime Minister has agreed to form a parliamentary select committee to look at electoral reforms. And the opposition People's PAC has agreed to take part.
Anwar Ibrahim is still on trial on sodomy charges.
Yeah.
What effect will that trial have on the election?
Well, I think you know, I think from the government's perspective, they feel that they need to get Anwar out of the political equation. But unfortunately, you know, no sane or real, what do you call that, most of the ordinary Malaysians outside the core supporters of the ruling party, most of them do not believe the charges. This is the second time around. There's also another video, supposedly a sex video going around. And, you know, people who have seen it and, you know, the entire trial, anyone who understands, not only understands law, understands common sense, will know that, you know, any other person would have been acquitted from these charges.
What plans has your party made, and the opposition alliance in general, to cater for the fact that he may be taken out of the election campaign and may be found guilty?
Well, as far as we're concerned, obviously he's innocent and all that. But yes, I mean, as far as we're concerned, if, you know, anything happens to him, I think we are better prepared. We have faced the same. When Anwar was first sacked in 1998, he was immediately imprisoned. He had probably 2 weeks between his sacking as Deputy Prime Minister, rallying the country during the Reformasi movement, and then being sent to jail. And then you know, the opposition coalition and the civil society had to organize themselves. Anwar was in prison. This time around, we have that experience, which was more than 10 years ago. We work better together. We've learned from the mistakes of the past. The leaders who were vital in forming the first coalition in 1999 are still there this time around, and I think are more matured. So, and there's a better cadre of younger leaders.
Nik Nazmi, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.